Thank you for joining us for another power-packed message from Dr. Myles Munroe, provided by Munroe Global Incorporated and monroeglobal.com. We transform followers into leaders and leaders into agents of change. We hope that this message is a blessing to you as you advance your life and discover your purpose. Now, let's go into the message. Discovering your personal leadership. Whenever there is an invitation for people to attend a leadership event or to participate in a leadership conference like this, most people respond to that invitation with the attitude that is not for me. That response is proof that your culture has done an excellent job in canceling who you are. This place, for example, would have been filled to capacity if we had said, come to a miracle service. So really it doesn't affect me at all. I know exactly what's going on here. I expected you and only you. I'm not impressed with crowds, you see. I speak to them all the time, millions of them. My real love is people like you who believe that this is for you. You know, Jesus didn't like crowds. He didn't trust them because he understood the strategy for changing the world. And the strategy for changing the world is not large meetings or big events. It's small groups committed to intensive transformation. So he chose 12 people. Can you imagine someone who came to change the world only chose 12 people? And his only focus with them was on leadership development. He started with raw material, which means these 12 specimens had no formal training in leadership. What I thought was a good strategy that he used was he at least chose businessmen. I like business people. Religious people are problems. So the people he chose were business people and professional people. Like Matthew was an accountant, Luke was a doctoral medical doctor, Peter, James, and John owned a fishing company. These were businessmen, and the number one business of that day was fishing in that village around Galilee. So these guys were owners of the top business industry. That's who he chose because he wanted to produce leaders. One time, his crowd grew too much. I remember that one day the people stayed with him for 3 days and they ran out of food. He decided it's my responsibility to make sure that they are fed before they go home. So we know the story. He worked a miracle, multiplied fish and bread, and he fed them. And the Bible says after that meeting was over, 70 joined him. Can you imagine having 12 people and all of a sudden you grew by 70%? Now, normally when you grow by 70%, you are excited. Jesus was not. He was suspicious. Why? Because he understands the crowds. They're not interested in changing, they're interested in feeding. So he turned to the 70 and he asked them a question. Why do you follow me? That's the question. Normally, if you are a pastor and your church grew by 70% in one day, you wouldn't ask that question. Matter of fact, you would say, thank you all for coming. But his suspicion was high. He said, why do you follow me? And then he answered the question for them. I know why you follow me. It's not because of the fish and bread I fed you yesterday. So there are people who just want miracles, but they don't want to change. And miracles never change people. You would remember the children of Israel, they saw more miracles than any of you could dream of. And in the end, they were still cursing God. And then Jesus topped it off by saying, if you seek for a miracle, you are a wicked and adulterous generation. So he asked them, why do you follow me? It's only because of the fish and bread. You just want stuff from me. You want handouts. You people want instant change in the world. You just want welfare. Watch him now. He says, look, if you want to follow me, if you want to be my disciple, he says, you must stop looking for the bread and the fish and you must feed on me. Eat my flesh, he says, and drink my blood. Now, those are the kinds of people who are here in this seminar tonight. I consider you very rare people. I'm not surprised. I tell you, I work with crowds. I don't trust it. Some also show up in the morning session. They don't. When they believe, those ones will come to the workshops. They're the real people. They're the ones who God will spend his time with and give them what they expected and more. The Bible says when the 70 heard this, you must eat my flesh and drink my blood, feed on you. It says, they said to each other, this is a hard saying. In other words, you are demanding too much. You want us to stay with you, and look to you for our livelihood. It says they forsook him and walked away. Could you imagine losing 30% of your members in one day? Sure, it can happen. But what intrigued me and impressed me is what he did after they left. It was a leadership act. But he was training his 12 guys. So he turns to the 12, the text says, and asked them a question, will you leave also? In other words, are you just like them? He also meant, I will do this by myself, by the way. And that's one of the most important principles of leadership. Finding something worth doing by yourself. If you need people to like you and approve of you for you to do what you're doing, you are not a leader yet, you're a politician. He was willing to go alone. Peter spoke up and said, Master, Rabbi, which means master, teacher. I'm going to paraphrase Peter a little bit. Peter probably said, we think you are crazy, Jesus. We do think you are a little bit weird, but you make sense to us. In you, he says, we have found the words that give us life or give our life meaning. That's what leaders do. Leaders give people's lives meaning. That's why they follow you. People follow you when they receive a sense of significance for their own lives. Peter's answer was powerful. In you, we have found the words that give us life. Our business was doing great, you know. We had a company, but you have shown us that we could do more than just business. We can change the world. And that's why we're here in this seminar the next 2 days. I guarantee you, if you listen to me very carefully, the next 48 hours, you are going to be transformed as a person. But you got to listen. You got to feed on me just a little bit, because what I'm teaching you is what I live. And it begins with discovering what I call your personal leadership. Leadership does not begin with people, it begins with you first. Let me give you a couple of things to write down, because I'm giving you what they never taught me in church, and that is, everyone is a leader. Pastors are afraid to say that because they don't want no competition in the pulpit. But leadership begins with how you think. So let me give you my philosophy of leadership that I had to discover for myself to become the person I am. Everyone was created to lead. Say that with me. Everyone was created to lead. Say it again. Everyone was created to lead. That's a tough statement. Most of you don't believe that statement. I understand it. I understand because I was the same way. Because when you read that statement, there is a contradiction in your mind right now. There's a battle going on, I know. The battle is the battle of a question. If everyone was created to lead, then who's going to follow? There's your battle. Let me give you another statement. Write this down. Trapped in every follower is a hidden leader. These are philosophical statements, but they are very important because leadership begins with your belief, and your belief system determines your philosophy of life. If every follower is a leader, then the question becomes a problem again. What happens when they all become leaders? Who's going to follow? The fact that you asked that question is proof that you've been successfully convinced by your culture that only a certain type and group of people were born to lead, while the other masses were designed to follow. That's really what you believe. That's why the question arises, because you cannot see in your mind everyone being a leader. Your problem is in your mind. I had the same problem, and this is why I teach this so hard, because it is that belief, that subtle belief that's in your mind that's trapping you right now. For example, in my mind, there is no economic crisis, but that's because of the way I think. So your thinking is your life. Let me give you another statement to write down. You were created to lead and designed to dominate. Say it with me. I was created to lead and designed to dominate. Those words are very powerful. You don't evolve into a leader, you were created to be one. The manufacturer actually had leadership in mind when he created you. But look at what they've done to you. They've made you an employee, and they told you where you can be employed, where you cannot be employed. And then they restrict how far you can rise in that employment. Why? Because nobody has challenged the system. This philosophy is not new that I'm teaching. It's as old as God. Write this statement down, please. True leadership is self-discovery. True leadership begins with an individual discovering something about themselves. That's when it really begins. And you will never become a true leader until you are introduced to yourself. You know, If you were to study the leaders of history who really changed the world, beginning with people like Moses, maybe you know, here Moses is on a job. He's employed by his father-in-law. Employment. So he thinks he's a shepherd, you know. That's what matters. What I do is my job. And then he meets his manufacturer. The manufacturer says to him, you are the deliverer and the leader of 1 million people. You are also an author of the first 5 books of the Bible. You are the leader of a labor force. You are a lawgiver. For all the nations of the world, they're going to steal your laws and use them. His answer? You must be talking to somebody else. You see, when you meet yourself, you are always afraid. Most of you are afraid of yourself because yourself does not agree with who you've become. You think you are a shepherd, a manager, a supervisor, and your real self is the first prime minister of a country called Israel. And when I introduce myself to myself, myself says to myself, that's not me. And I argued for 3 weeks with myself. Gideon, remember Gideon? Hiding under the floor, trembling in fear from the enemy outside. And then the manufacturer shows up. Good evening, Gideon. Do you know who you are? You are a mighty man of valor. Gideon says, oh, who are you talking to? You see, when you meet yourself, you can't believe yourself. And we're so corrupted by our culture, we actually argue with ourselves with good arguments. Gideon says, I was born in the wrong family, born in the wrong clan, born on the different side of the track. Are you crazy? People like us don't be valiant. We ain't mighty warriors, we are cowards. And the manufacturer says, you are a mighty man of valor. He says, say what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a fleece outside. If it's wet, I'll believe you. So he put a fleece wet. He said, just to make sure, let me put it out again. If it's dry in the morning. In other words, here we are fussing with ourselves. You know why I came to this conference? I came here to introduce you to yourself. What you're doing is embarrassing to God. What you are proud of, He's ashamed of. What you settled for is a shock to heaven. I know what I'm talking about. I was there. You got to discover something. And that's where leadership begins. It begins at self-discovery. I want you to take a look at this slide. This is a car. You ever seen a car like that before? That's a car, 40,000 reals parts or more make up a car. That's a car taken apart. Now, I show you that for a reason. I want to ask you a question. Here's the question. Which part of this car is the most important part of the car? You look at the engine of the car, what is the most important part of the engine? These questions are important. 40,000 parts. Which part is most important? Your car in the parking lot has a great engine in it, beautiful parts. But the question is, which part is the most important? I'm going to show you 2 parts here. The battery is the big boy. So if I was to ask you, which is the most important part of your engine, you would probably say the battery, because the battery has all the power. Powerful. It'd be like powerful people. No me power. Allegra. Power. You know, we like power. So we go for the powerful bit, the battery. It's the most important person in the car because the battery has the power to get things started. Well, I disagree. So who's the leader in this engine? Is it the battery? Well, we got a little thing on the side called a spark plug. Now the battery probably costs about 150 bucks. Spark plugs cost about maybe, 10 bucks. So we got a difference in value as well. Can a battery become more important than a spark plug? If you remove the spark plugs, the battery is useless. Sometimes more important? Well, I don't know yet. I'll show you something else. Right in the middle of this picture, there is a little wire. Right in the middle, in the background. See that wire? It's called a terminal wire. The terminal wire is what you connect to the battery and to the generator. The terminal wire costs $4. The battery costs $150. Who's more important in this car? Well, let's find out. With all the power the battery has, if you remove that $4 wire from the battery's terminal, the battery is useless. So who's the leader? Well, let's find out. Here's all the power trapped in the battery. The battery is useless to the car without a $4 wire. Who's the most important person in the organization? Is it the CEO or the maintenance woman? Is it the secretary who types? Or is it the manager of stores that oversees resources? Who really is the leader? See, this scenario is an interesting one because that $4 wire can shut the car down. The car is worth $80,000. $4 can shut it down. Isn't that amazing? Now the problem is this. The little terminal wire has to connect to the battery and to the generator. And all it does is a function called transfer. It transfers power to the generator that hits the spark, that turns the shaft, that causes the whole engine to turn over, that causes the wheels to turn, and you can control it. Transfer. The only problem is the terminal wire has no power. It's just a transfer function. The only problem with the battery is it cannot transfer. It has all the power. The only problem with the spark plug is it ain't got no power and can't transfer. But they can produce fire. So who's the leader in the whole situation? No one and everyone. That's the answer. Here's the answer. Everyone is a leader in their area of functioning. Write that down. This is the concept of leadership that God introduced. Every part of the car is a leader in its area of functioning. So we have to respect each part. They have successfully convinced you that you are useless, and they use you to do what they want you to do, they meaning your culture, and you obey them because you don't know who you were born to be. You have no idea what your function is. When I discovered who I was, I became free from them. I began to dictate my own value. Therefore, I told them, you need me. Come on, say it. You need me. Say it like you feel it. You need me. Say it louder. You need me. See, you become a leader when you discover that one discovery, they need me. The world needs me. Say it. Say it now. The world needs me. I want you to say it until a revelation comes from it. Let me tell you something. If you discover that, you become dangerous. You are not an accident. You're an assignment. Yes, leadership. You know, we talk about leadership. There's a photograph of all of the leaders in the world together, the present ones, a recent photograph taken. And I want to talk in this session about some of the areas I want to cover very quickly. First, my objective is to help you to see that we need and value leadership. Secondly, we want to talk about what leadership is, what it takes to become a leader. We want to talk about the principles of leadership tomorrow and the art of leading, how to do it. And then we want to talk about the cost and the price of becoming a leader. It is costly. This is why we love following so much. It doesn't cost much to follow. But yet, when you follow, you hardly ever find out who you are. So we want to talk about those things. But here the leader that you all are acquainted with. You spend time in this state, born here, walking through the airport of this state capital. They have his coat and tie. You'll wonder, why would someone want to put a man's coat on display in an airport and we won't ever see your coat? I'm going to explain to you why, okay? And hopefully, if you get this revelation we teach you in this initial seminar, they'll want your coat also. Leadership is an amazing thing. First of all, here's why leadership is important. Write this down. Nothing happens without leadership. Nothing changes without leadership. Nothing develops without someone taking leadership. Nothing improves in any situation without leadership. Nothing is corrected without leadership. If something is not right in an environment, someone has to emerge and take the leadership. Nothing advances without leadership. Nothing proceeds without leadership. And this is a reminder we are always being led by someone, whether we think so or not. So look at how important leadership is. It improves, it changes, it develops, it corrects, it advances, and it brings success in life. This is probably one of the reasons why the religious people are so ineffective, because they pray too much for things to be corrected, to change, to improve, to develop, to advance, and to succeed. I think one day Rosa Parks decided to stop praying, that's all. What made her a leader? She decided, no more prayer. I'm now going to be active. This is why the drug problem in your community is so diabolically destructive. But you keep praying for them. You wouldn't do anything. Leadership is born when toleration ends. Why? Whatever you tolerate, you will never change. What did I say? Whatever you tolerate, you will never change. This is why there are very few leaders in your city. Your toleration level is very high. Leaders are usually angry people. As a matter of fact, you will learn tomorrow night the secret to becoming a true leader. And one of the secrets is anger when you decide, I have had enough. A leader is about to be born. Toleration is the graveyard of leaders. And that's why we lack leadership in the 21st century. Everybody wants to be liked. Nobody wants to rock the boat. That's why we're not leaders, because we want everyone to agree with us. So what we have is companies and churches and nations that are overmanaged and underled. Don't ever confuse a manager with a leader. No manager is a leader, but leaders are managers. What's the difference between a manager and a leader? In my book on the table called Becoming a Leader, make sure you read that book. It deals with this subject. But let me give you a hint. A manager maintains things. A leader changes everything. A manager follows policy. A leader creates policy. A manager keeps tradition. A leader breaks it. Managers focus on the bottom line. Leaders focus on the horizon. Let's do it. Managers focus on doing the right thing. Leaders, and very unique leaders, want to know whether we're doing the right thing. If you are led by a manager, you will never grow. If your pastor is a manager, the church is stuck. If your department is headed by a manager, it will never expand. If your husband is a manager, your family is stuck. So we need managers, but we need leaders more. Managers are good. Leaders are what give managers work to do. Let me ask some questions. I need some interesting questions. I pose to students. I teach this in universities, and I do surveys. Here's my question I give them. Is leadership about power? What do you think now? Okay. Is it about position? Is leadership about talent? You sure? Is leadership about skill, if it's a skillful person? Is leadership about authority? Is leadership about status in your society? Is leadership really about charisma? By the way, the word charisma is a Greek word. It's a very dangerous word invented by the Greeks. Some of you all call yourselves charismatic. Speak carefully. It's a Greek word. It means giftings of the gods, plural gods, because they were polytheists. They believe in many gods. Charisma, giftings of the gods. Paul used it. He borrowed the Greek word to teach on the gifts of the Holy Spirit. But it's a Greek word, charisma. We have our own idea what that means. Last question. Are leaders born or made? Very important question. Some people struggle with that. I answered it years ago. I'm clear in my head. So the question is, when does one become a leader? It's a tough question, you know, because the question would be, when did Rosa Parks become a leader? So you don't need to be a PhD from a college to be a leader. You can just be an old lady on a bus. I told you everybody's a leader. Everybody. Believe it. The problem is they haven't told you how to become one. She discovered something. Don't die the way you are. Don't give them the privilege of firing you forever. Don't let people terminate what you call a career. How dare you allow people to cancel your life with a pink slip? This is crazy. That's why we're here. The dumbest animal on the planet is a sheep. Some of y'all don't know that. In case you don't, I must say it again. The dumbest animal God made is a sheep. Do you know why? There are no leading sheep. I want you to study a flock of sheep anywhere. You will never see a leader. It's the only animal in the world that doesn't have a leader. Elephants have a leader. Bulls have a leader. You know, bees have a leader. Everyone except the sheep. If someone says you are a sheep, that's not a compliment. And religious people love the word, love it. I am God's flock. That's not a compliment. Follow me. I'm going to show you how we're screwed up, even in our theology, even in what we are. The sheep is the dumbest animal because he will follow anyone because he has no leader. So I have a little test for you. If an army of sheep is led by a lion, do you believe they will always defeat an army of lions if they are led by a sheep? And the answer is yes. An army of sheep led by a lion will defeat an army of lions if the lions are led by a sheep. What's the moral of this parable? Here it is. Write it down. Leadership determines the quality of the followers. You know, a good leader can transform cowards into warriors. A good leader can transform frightened people into fearless people. Again, what a state to be teaching this principle, the state of Georgia. Years of oppression, and then a short little preacher became a lion, and he motivated frightened people to stand in the face of water hoses. He turned little girls into giants who could face dogs. This is leadership. It's so powerful it can transform cowards. Here's what it means. Leadership determines the mentality of the followers. Leadership also determines the morality of the followers. Your morale and your morals can be transformed by the right kind of leader. Leadership also determines the attitude of the follower. In essence, leadership determines the commitment of the follower. That's why we need you. We need you to discover your leadership, because there are people in your city who are being abused by the system, and they need someone to emerge who will give them hope, because leadership determines the destiny of followers. I couldn't say it any better than my own greatest leader of all time, the ultimate leader of life, when he said these words: if the blind lead, wow, if the blind lead the blind, he says, they both fall into the ditch. Which means the leader determines the destination of the followers. That's how powerful leadership is. Let me tell you something about your life. You are exactly where someone led you. If you don't like where you are right now in your life, you're going to have to reconsider changing leadership. You know why I love this church? This is the second time I'm here doing this. I mean this church. Do you know this? Do you know how many people wanted me tonight? I'm talking about massive organizations in the world wanted me. I decided I like this man's desire. They wanted me to stay in Israel 3 extra days, and all I'm going to Atlanta. Why? Because there's someone there who believes they could do better. I don't think the members of this church really know their pastor. There is so. Your problem is you want to shout and holler and then die broken sick. This conference is about to set you free from that stuff. It makes me so sad see people, having religious fits, all this emotional stuff, because they are sheep. They just follow anybody. People come in town with white suit, white Bible, white shoes. They run to that person. Just sheep. If the blind lead. You know what Jesus was telling us? He's telling us it's possible for a person to be in charge with a title, with a position, with power, with influence, and still be blind. Don't ever be impressed with power. Don't be impressed with position. Ask the question, where are we going? What's our destination? Because I might not want to go with you. Hello, somebody. See, that's how powerful leadership is. Leadership will lead you to their destiny. Some of you know the story about Jim Jones in Guyana. Sheep. I mean, sensible people with a brain with 500 billion cells followed a man in a bush and drank poison, because they never asked the question, where are we going? What is your vision? Write this down. Vision is more important than leadership. Please get the book on vision on the table, please. Very important. People think that leadership is important, but vision is more important than leadership, because vision is what creates the leader. What makes you a leader is the fact that you see a future that's better than the present. So leadership is powerful. There are 2 animals that God identified himself with. Both of them are leaders. One is the eagle, the other is the lion. I was wondering why God did this, but he created them so he knows their qualities and their character. I love them both. I always love eagles and lions. Come to my office, you see lions and eagles all over the place. My home eagles all over the place. In a couple of days I go to Africa. I told my planners down there, I got to go see the lions again. Every time I go once, I got to spend time with my cousins, and I go and spend the whole day with my friends, the lions, because when I spend time with them, they remind me of me. They remind me of leadership. As a matter of fact, Jesus says he is the Lion of Judah, not the copy or a dog, the Lion of Judah, not the monkey or the raccoons, the lion. God identified himself as a lion. You better study the lion, because he rules the universe. God identified with a lion and he rules the universe. That means the lion has some qualities that he wants you to study. Here's one. The lion is very strange. Number one, the lion is not the tallest animal in the jungle. He's not the strongest. He's not the biggest. He's not the most powerful. And he's not the most intelligent. And yet, he's the leader. Tell your neighbor, there's hope for you. What the lion has done is he has canceled all of your excuses for not being a leader. The color of his mane or his skin doesn't inhibit him from being a leader. His intellect, his strength, there are so many animals in the jungle more powerful than the lion. Stronger, taller, bigger, more intelligent. And yet, the lion eats all of them for lunch. As a matter of fact, when the lion sees an elephant, he simply thinks, lunch. Why is the lion the leader? Because of attitude. Write it down, attitude. Attitude comes from your belief system, and it produces confidence. The lion believes that he can eat an elephant. That belief becomes the source of his confidence, and so he moves toward the elephant. The elephant is 50 times more powerful, 100 times bigger, 80 times more intelligent, 60% more powerful, and yet the lion eats him for lunch. Why? Because the lion's attitude reduces that elephant to a meal. This is why he's the leader. Leadership is 80% mentality, attitude, and 20% skill. And this is why skillful people work for those with the right attitude. Look at this. Man, I took the photograph myself. There's an elephant and the lion doesn't move. You see, when you look at your problems, how do you respond to them? You've got a bill that ain't being paid. You've got a mortgage that ain't seeming to be addressed. You have demands that you can't meet. This is an elephant. How does the leader look at these things? They see it differently. A lion looks at the elephant and he simply thinks one word: this is lunch. The thinking controls the action of the creature. That's why he's dangerous. What makes Myles Munroe dangerous is my thinking. If I tell you my story, you will know that I am a miracle mentally. I wasn't always like this. I was changed between my ears. I got some new information. I'm going to give that to you in these next 2 days, the same information that happened to me. Because I was able to think like the lion. Look at that. Look at that leader in action. And they said, wait a minute, but this is a monster. He says, I don't care. A leader is fearless because of knowledge. There's something the leader knows that makes them fearless. So leadership here doesn't get its power from its muscle, it gets its power from its belief. You will never be a leader until I can change the way you believe, because your belief system produces your philosophy. So leaders don't see through their eyes, they see through their belief. Your eyes say, that's an elephant. Your belief says, that's lunch. So if you see through your belief, instead of running away from it, you run toward it. So leaders respond based on their belief system. So to a leader like this, the simple question is, what do you believe? It is, how do you get to think like that? I'm going to show you right now. I'm setting you up for tomorrow morning, okay? I want you to really make sure you're here, because this is more important than keeping a job. As a matter of fact, your job is not your work. Your job is what they pay you to do. Your work is what you were born to do. You will never become successful from your job. And your job is not even permanent. So you can't trust that. You need to find your work. Your job is your skill. Your work is your gift. You can learn the skills, but you're born with your gift. And they can't take that from you. If they fire you, your gift goes with you. That's why I am unemployable. Why? I've been deployed, and I came here to deploy you. If you deploy yourself, there'll never be a crisis anymore in your life. No more economic crises for those who deploy themselves. How do you think? And how do you get to think the way you think? And what made you think what you think right now? Where'd you get this attitude from that you have? The history that created you is still with you. And even though you wear different clothes, drive a different car, it's the same person. Because somehow our history is so heavy, it's tough to cut loose. We feel apologetic about being successful. We feel ashamed to be in charge. Some may say, see, when you still carry your history, you are afraid of success because you may lose your friends who ain't going nowhere. Very subtle problems. Your attitude is so powerful, it creates your atmosphere. It also is the source of your natural lifestyle. And if you're going to change your life, you've got to change your attitude. But here's the bottom line. Write this down. Your belief system is the source of your attitude. I know you came here thinking, Dr. Munroe, tell us 10 principles of leadership. No, that's not what you need first. You need to change the way you think first. I was invited to speak at Harvard University a few months ago, and the room was filled with all of these technocrats and these professors and all these Ivy League people. And they invited me to speak on leadership. Do you know what I came and talked about? I talked about thinking. When I was finished, first standing ovation ever. And Harvard University says they had never had anybody get into their heads before. I exposed those who are racist. I showed them that your thinking is your philosophy. that destroys the way you treat people in your department. And until your thinking changes, you are contaminated leadership. They had never heard such a level of teaching on leadership. Why? Because unless your mind changes, you will never become a leader. Ladies and gentlemen, let me put it this way. Attitude determines your limitation, which means that your belief system determines how far you go. You can never lead beyond your attitude and your belief system. And that's why your life is what you think it should be and exactly what it is. Attitude is the manifestation of your personal philosophy. And that's why the first session is dealing with discovering your personal leadership first. Then we could talk about people. Write this down. Philosophy is a product of your ideas. And this is why I started this session out with a question. Do you believe that everyone is a leader? You have problems with that, and I understand, because the culture doesn't allow it. Could you imagine going to work tomorrow telling your boss, I am a leader too? You'd have problems with that. People tell me, you know, they have a PhD in physics, and I laugh at them. I say, really? So what does that mean? That means nothing to me. How does that make you better than me? Your education doesn't change your human value. We are still equal as humans. And I do know some things you don't know. So we've got to be careful. Our philosophy ideas is the source of our philosophy. And I like what the great king said, King Solomon. As a man thinks, where? In his heart, so is he. Don't ever quote that verse again without putting the word heart in it. Most of you quote that and leave the word heart out. And the most important part of the verse is the word heart. As a man thinketh, so is he. That is not what he said. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Why? Here's why. Because the heart is the Hebrew word that has to do with the center of reasoning. It's the place where you have meetings with yourself, where you talk to yourself. That's your heart. That's the meeting place where you reason with yourself. That's where you announce and say, well, let's see, now can I do this? Can I not do it? Can I really do this? That's where you have meetings with yourself, because that's where your belief system is hidden. In other words, your heart is also what Paul calls the hidden man. The psychologists would call it your subconscious mind. I call it your hard drive. You know, this iPad got a hard drive on it. Don't trust what's on the desktop display. Don't trust that. The stuff on the inside, that's the real thing. Now, what is your heart? Your heart is the place where you keep all the ideas you collected all your life, the ones you believe, you keep them. So when you hear the word heart in the Bible, don't point at your chest, point at your head, laugh at that appeal and heart. Don't go to your chest religiously. We go to the chest. Your heart is not the pump in your body. It's doing its job pumping blood. That's not what God is talking about. So when it says blessed are the pure at heart, it ain't your pump. It has to do with your mind. Are your thoughts pure? Are you thinking in purity? So he says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As a man thinks in his subconscious mind, what have you downloaded as your software on your hard drive that you believe? Every time someone touches a button in your life, whatever's there comes up. For example, there's some of you black people in this room, when a white man comes into your department, you become very nervous. And when a black man comes, you act like you don't care. In other words, there's something in your cardio, your hard drive, that's got some problems. There's some viruses, you're sick, it's there on your hard drive. 40 years of struggling is still there. You ain't free yet, you just delivered. Deliverance is when you leave Egypt and enter the wilderness. Freedom is when Egypt leaves your mind. So stop telling people you're free. You are still in the wilderness. And notice what God did in the wilderness. He kept them going around in circles. 40 years going around in circles. You know, my wife and I had an experience, I'll never forget this. We went from Israel to Egypt. And, you know, we were going to visit Egypt for the first time. This was years ago. We went there. We got on the aircraft. And man, the aircraft took off. I'm getting excited. I'm going to see Egypt. I'm going to see Pharaoh. You know, the remains of all this stuff. Getting excited. Before I could get excited, they said, we're about to land, fasten your seatbelts. I said, wait a minute, we just took off. And the flight attendant said, yes, we're landing. I said, but we just left. She said, yes, but we're landing. I said, what do you mean? She said, Cairo is only 20 minutes away. You don't know what I just said. Okay, let me explain it to you. It took Moses and them 40 years to go from Egypt to Israel, but only 20 minutes by plane. So remember when we got to Egypt, right? They picked us up, took us to our hotel, checked us in, and now our first tour guide came to get us. We boarded the bus. As we were going to the pyramids on our way out there, I became very intrigued. So I asked the driver, excuse me, sir, how far is Israel from here? He said, well, it depends on how you go. I said, well, explain it to me. He said, from Cairo to Jerusalem, if you walk, it's about 40 days. If you take a bus, it's 24 hours. Take a plane, 20 minutes. I told my wife, where's my Bible? I got to read my Bible. I went back to the hotel room, got my Bible and said, let me just see, I think God made a mistake. It took them 40 years for a 40-day trip. And then I read in the Bible and it says, because they had not gotten Egypt out of their minds, the Lord led them the long way around until the children were born. Let me give you the point I'm making. God will deliver you, but he will never set you free. You can set yourself free. They walked around in the desert for 40 years. Why? Because 40 years is a generation. What was God doing? He was waiting 40 years until he got what they were carrying in their loins, the next generation. When the kids came up, God killed them all, or rather, killed all the parents. The Bible says God allowed none of them to go into the promised land. Why? Because they were still thinking about onions instead of milk and garlic instead of honey. They didn't change their thinking. Your mentality is more important than your location. If you don't change as a person mentally, you will stay where you are physically. So God killed them all, only 2 left. And those 2 were born in the desert, Caleb and Joshua. They had no memory of oppression. They believed anything was possible. Leadership begins with thinking. So my question is, what is your philosophy of leadership? Why don't you believe that you could own a company? Why is the first thing you look for a job instead of looking to create a business? It's several questions, but why? Why do you go to college and study an area that guarantees employment rather than guarantees deployment? Because your hard drive is stuck. You know, I sit with heads of state. You saw those pictures, heads of state, kings, governments. I work with them all the time. And most of the folks who run countries are sick just like you. They don't know what to do with the country. Power doesn't make you smart, it exposes your ignorance. Let me quickly do this, because I don't want you to have nightmares. Let me conclude this by giving you God's philosophy of leadership, okay? I'm going back to the beginning, where you began. Genesis chapter 1 is really about you. Verse 26 says, then God said, let us make a species called man in our own image, according to our likeness. And it tells us why. He says, to let them have dominion over fish of the sea, birds of the air, over the cattle and the animals of the field, over all that's growing in the earth, and over everything that creeps on the ground. Now, every word of this statement is very important. And in this verse is the secret to your life. It's the secret to your greatness and your leadership. This is where I found mine right here. I found it in here. I'm just going to say this. I hate to talk about these things. I'll just say it. A lot of my contracts with governments, they pay me $5,000 an hour. Could you imagine? You work for 10 hours, 3 days? Okay. I used to sleep on the floor with roaches. I am from a family of 11 children. 1 mother, 1 father. I am number 6 right in the middle. I was born in a wooden house on 4 big rocks in a small, low-income, poor area called Baintown in the Bahamas, on an island 7 miles wide. That was my life, 7 miles wide, 20 miles long. I was born in a village on the poorest part. The house had 2 rooms, 11 kids in there, 2 bedrooms, 1 for my mother and father, 1 for my 7 sisters. We slept like sardines. So the 4 boys slept on the floor. So I was born with 1 chicken, 11 kids. The neck was a delicacy. Listen, this is my life. 1 pair of shoes for the whole year. If it sprung a hole, I had to put cardboard in it. I remember sleeping with roaches running over my body. I remember waking up in the morning with roaches' blood. I was scratching the mosquitoes dead, trapped under a dirty sheet on that mat on the floor. I remember looking up at the ceiling and seeing the stars through iron buckets to catch the water from the rain. Don't talk to me about poverty. And my father was a Baptist pastor, and I went to church 3 or 4 times a week, and I slept with roaches. Don't tell me about religion. So when I talk to you from this position, I'm talking to you, I'm telling you what works for me. And now, to be paid $5,000 an hour, how do you move from the floor with roaches to being called on by heads of state to talk to their entire governments? Something happened in my mind, and it began with this verse: let us make man. The word man here is the word ish. Write it down in Hebrew, ish. It's a plural word, which means that God wasn't making a person. He was making a species. All of us are called man. For example, we call all dogs, dogs. We call all cats, cats. God called all of us man. Man is the designation of the whole species. It comes in 2 models, male and female, but it's all man. And then he says, I want to make this particular product in my own image. Write the word image down C. This becomes important. This is what set me free. The word image doesn't mean to look like. The Hebrew word means characteristics. Characteristics. Let them have the same characteristics, qualities of God. No Baptist pastor told me that. My father couldn't teach me, Faith didn't know it. I defined it for myself. I have God's character. Wow, what a discovery for a little boy sleeping on the floor. I am just like my Father God. Well, my mind was changing. You know, we had teachers from Europe because we were oppressed by the British. We were their slaves. Years ago, my great-grandfather was a slave. And the British people told us that we were half-breed monkeys. They were very clear. They said, you are not fully human. You are a different class. One of them said to me, your brain is small, underdeveloped. You're not able to be educated. All you can do is music and dancing. And that's why they still believe that today, right here in this city, all your people do is dance and music. Why don't you run the economy? We don't change, we entertain. I decided, number, I've got God's character. I've got to find this. The qualities of God are in you. Every one of you, black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter where we come from. You have God's image. This is not a message for any race of people. It's for human beings. You can do anything you dream. You're just like your God, your Father. Boy, that thing hit me like a bolt of lightning. And then there was likeness. I had to look it up for myself in the Hebrew. You know what it means? It means to function like. Let us make a creature that has our characteristics and functions like us. That means you function just like God, your Father. Which means you've got to study, how does God function? Because if you don't function like God, you are malfunctioning. For example, in God's Bible, there is no fear. So when you fear life, you are malfunctioning. So I'm afraid of nothing. Literally, I'm afraid of nothing. That makes me dangerous. A fearless man is a dangerous man. I'm not afraid of death. And that's the highest threat you can give me. And I'm not afraid of death. And you'll find that all true leaders have no fear of death. As a matter of fact, they have an affair with death, all true leaders. Why did God create you? Read it, to have dominion. So what was the motivation for God's creation of you? Dominion. Why did God create you? Say it loud. Dominion. The motivation for God to create you was not to have worship services. He never said prayer meetings. He never said to be a bishop. We know what culture's done a good job with us. Here's a guy who's a bishop and can't pay his light bill. Here's an evangelist who owes everybody. An apostle who can't even pay his mortgage. Something's wrong with this. We've missed the point. He didn't create you to be a title. He created you to have dominion. And what is dominion? This is where leadership is born. See, the word dominion, I checked it out. The word radah in Hebrew, write it down. It actually means to rule. It also means to govern. It means to master, to manage resources. It means to control things. It means to have sovereign authority. It actually means to lead. Please buy this CD and listen to it a few times. Get this in your spirit. That is why you are created to be a ruler, a governor, a manager, a controller, an authority, and a leader. Now, here's why it changed. Here's why it changed. When I discovered this, I had to discover the second principle. I'm going to give it to you. If he designed you, created you to be a leader, a master, a governor, a ruler, a controller, then there must be the ability to do it. But notice, he didn't give you rulership over people. He listed what you should lead: birds, fish, animals, plants, and creeps. This is very important. God said, let's make a leader, a governor, a manager, a ruler, not to rule people. So leadership in God's mind is not about people, it's about resources. You've been taught, he who has no one following is simply taking a walk. That's what the Chinese taught you. Kaiser disagrees. He said, you are a leader, whether someone is following you or not, as long as you are fulfilling the management of resources through your gift. But you see, here's the way it works. Here's the way it works in God's concept. Write down this secret. Whatever a manufacturer demands, he builds into the product. Brothers, this is what changed me from the floor. Whatever a manufacturer demands from a product, he builds it into the product. Am I right? Am I right about this? Think of anything, your car, for example, your computer, your iPad, your iPhone, whatever you have, your refrigerator, whatever it's supposed to function as, it is built with. Number two, whatever God calls for, he provides for. Number three, whatever God demands, he inputs. Number four, whatever God expects from something, he injects it into it. Number five, whatever God gave the purpose of a thing to do, he built it with the potential to do it. That changed my life. Because when I discovered the principle of creation, I discovered my ability. So when a manufacturer makes a product, he makes it for a purpose. Purpose means to perform a specific function. He builds into the product the capacity to perform the function. Then he sells it to you. And he tells you to demand these certain things from the product. You can demand it because it's already built in. When I discovered this, my life changed. Because suddenly I realized that no one in my environment could determine what I could and could not do. That's when I canceled my European teachers. It was at that point my life changed. I was 13 years old and I discovered this. I'll show you something, even a demonstration. If God created you to dominate, then the capacity to dominate is in you. Did you get the principle? Okay. So whatever you were born to do is built in. So here's what I want you to take a look at now. Conception does not guarantee manifestation. Now, what I mean by that, ice, a bird, and a fish were created by God. The fish was created to do what? Swim. So fish do not attend swimming lessons. I know it sounds simple, but it's very important. Why? Because swim is built into the fish. Why? Because God demanded the fish to swim. So he put the ability in it. Birds were designed by God to fly. So birds don't attend flight school. Flight is built in. I like this one, seeds. Seeds were designed by the Creator to bring forth trees. You'll never find a seed attending a tree growing convention to learn how to grow trees. Why? Where is the tree? Trapped on the inside. In other words, whatever God creates something to do, he builds it in. You know, culture and your educational system don't allow you to discover that. We are educated to be employed, not to be deployed. And seeds deploy themselves and become trees. Fish deploy themselves and they swim. Birds deploy themselves and they fly. We are the only creature God created who doesn't deploy ourselves because our culture doesn't allow it. You got to get freed from the culture. And it's seminars like this that make you begin to have a meeting with yourself and discuss yourself with yourself and say to yourself, self, am I who I really am? Here's my conviction. This is what I believe. Every human being is a leader trapped by an erroneous philosophy that they were born to follow. God said, let us make man to have what? Dominion, to govern, to rule, to lead, to control. Which means that somewhere inside of you is a ruler, a controller, a leader, a dominator. So man leads because he would not have demanded it if he didn't inject it. Which means that your ability is determined by your responsibility. Your potential is designed by your purpose. If your potential is equal to what you were born to do, okay, The best example I can give you is this car. Look at this car. All cars have what they call a speedometer. Am I right? So here's an old one-in, old speedometer. Show me now. If you look at the numbers go up to 160 miles per hour. This car can travel. All of your cars have that kind of registration. Sometimes 200, 180, everybody got that, right? Okay. Now, when you bought the car, that was on the car, you bought the car with it, it goes up to 180 miles per hour. It came ready to go. Okay, I'm flex-lated. Okay, so you bought this car, you brought it home, and the manufacturer says this car can travel 180 miles per hour. How can the manufacturer put that on there? What makes him so sure that this vehicle could travel 180? That's the first question. Second question is, have you ever traveled 180 in the car? Number. Let me tell you how stupid our philosophy in our countries is. We sell a car that can travel 180 and put a sign up 50 miles per hour. Isn't that amazing? It's crazy. I don't understand it. I have no idea how they got this idea. I don't know where it comes from. But it tells you the nature of your culture. Don't tree it. They give the company permission to build the capacity, but restrict your ability to use it. And you never thought about that. And that's the way they think about you. So all your life, you can make 180. But you've been traveling for 50 years at 60 miles per hour. And you think you're living. The capacity is present. Our culture says you can't go any further. And God says, press the accelerator. And your culture says you can't go any further. You can't go any faster. And God says, yes, you can. And your culture says you can't do that. And God says, let's go. Your culture says, stop. That's as far as you can go. You've got to make a decision tonight. See, you have God's ability and man puts up the signs. You're a follower and God says you're a leader. You're an employee and God says you're a controller. You are subject and God says you are ruler. They keep putting up signs. One day I was in Germany. My wife and I spent 6 nights in Germany. And one day we were going from München to another city for me to speak. And we got on what they call the Autobahn. The Autobahn is a road without limits, no speed limit. Okay, once again, we could go as fast as we want. So my host was driving a beautiful black Mercedes. And you know me, I'm from the Western world, where there are signs everywhere, okay? You know, you guys can't get an Autobahn here. So I'm on the highway, man. And he said to me in German, you know, I spoke German. He said, have you ever been on the Autobahn? I said, what is it? He said, this is the street we're about to enter, where there's no limit. We can drive as fast as we want. I said, what? He said, would you like to drive? I said, yes. For the first time in my life, I have an opportunity to open a car like a proper Mercedes. I felt flex. I said, I get to drive? He said, yes. So he pulled off at a gas station. We switched. I got in the car. He said, go on, turn off. We turned off onto the highway. He said, okay, go ahead. He says, you know, we're going to be driving for another 4 hours, so don't worry about it. Man, I began to see that needle go up. And I became excited, and I hit 60, right? Mentally 60. I go, oh dear. He said, go ahead. I said, really? He said, go ahead. And I went up 80, and my whole heart began to pump faster. And I'm thinking, I'm flying. He said, Dr. Munroe, please go ahead. I said, Germany? He said, yes, go ahead. I'm 97. He says, go ahead. Now the car could make 250. And I'm thinking, oh, Jesus, me. He says, go ahead, you're going too slow. He said, you're going too slow. I hit 100 and my whole body began to rebel. My mind began to rebel. And I realized that I was corrupted by my culture. And he said, you are going too slow. At 120, he said, would you please? Now by this time, I'm the only car on the road. I'm seeing enough, man. You know, at 125, I'm thinking I'm the fastest man in the world. And I'm flying. All of a sudden, a guy passed me. He that told me I was going too slow went up to 150. My whole body, my whole mind, everything locked up. I said, you can't do this. He said, what's the matter? I said, I'm at 150. He said, you're still going too slow. This is the Autobahn. The average speed is 185. Do you still want to drive or do you want to pull over? I said, I'm going to try to drive. And at 170, there was a barrier broken in my mind. I never forgot that to this day. At 170, something happened to me. I realized there was life after 170. Wow, man. At 185, I realized, cool, I think I can even go more. He said, go ahead, 208. Man, I'm sitting on air. He said, now we're driving. My life was changed that day. No more barriers in my life. There was a point where I had to break it. That's why you're here this week. I'm going to take you to that point. You got to break it. There's life after your job. There's life outside your career. There's life beyond the pulpit. Don't let the pastor become your gauge. There's life beyond your employment. You got to break it. You're a leader. I call it unreleased potential, driving at 50 with a car capable of 180. See, you think you're doing well until someone passes you. I thought I was doing well. Then a guy passed. I said, excuse me? And tonight, I am the German sitting in the passenger seat. That's who I am for you right now. And I'm here to tell you, go for it. Go faster. Break it. That's the way I am. I'm the guy sitting on the passenger side saying, you're going too slow. You can do better than this. You're in deep. I hope that this first night will cause you to think about your own limitations, because that's you. The Creator is the only manufacturer I know who hides a man inside a boy. He hides a woman in a girl. He doesn't create women, he hides them. He doesn't create men, he hides them. I wonder who's trapped in you. Come on, will we ever meet you? I guess the graveyard will get it. Today I look at myself in the mirror and I keep thinking, that was me on the floor with the mosquitoes and the roaches. I wonder who's sitting in your chair right now. A global leader? Can you see yourself? You know why you're still alive? It's because the manufacturer's not satisfied. He's bored. He's telling you, you've not shown yourself yet. Show yourself. Let's close with these statements. Write them down, please. You were born to lead, but you must become a leader. That's the purpose for a seminar and a conference. I'm not here to make you leaders. I am here to expose you as a leader. A seed is a tree, but it must become the tree. And that's the way you are right now. You are a great woman, an awesome man, but you must become. It is my passion, my hope, my anger that no human being dies until they're manifested. Let's meet you before you go. Let the world see who you really are before you leave us. Show us yourself. Show yourself. You could run the race. Running the race of life is not about beating people, it's about releasing yourself. That's why great leaders never compete with anyone, they compete within themselves. They try to see how much of themselves they can release. Tomorrow leadership. I will never compete with you. I'm too original. Repeat aloud, please. You are not created to lead people. You were created to lead in an area of gifting. Number 3, true leadership is born when your gift is discovered and served to the world. Number 4, the value in each human is the gift they were born to deliver to humanity. That's you. There's something you carry in that we need. I told you that leadership is not about people following you. It's about you discovering yourself, your gift, and then serving that to humanity. Leadership is like a tree, a seed becoming a tree, and then bearing its fruit. You will never find a fruit tree bringing its fruit to you. I'm giving you the greatest secret of leadership right now. Leaders don't seek followers. Followers are attracted to leaders. Just like you are attracted to the tree's fruit. When you go to a fruit tree, you don't go for the leaves nor the branches. What do you go for? The fruit. That's why no one's following you yet, because you're not manifesting your gift. Before I leave this city by tomorrow night, I'm going to help you find your gift. Because if you find your gift, they will find you and then they'll pay you for it. They will follow you for your gift. I'm talking about your gift you're supposed to give to humanity. The greatest statement I've ever heard about gift and leadership is this: for the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. That's why we come to him. If you want to be ransomed, you come to the tree. He said, I serve myself. That's why the greatest leadership in the world is to become a servant. Get it? It doesn't mean you're a slave to people. You're a slave to your gift. You serve it, but if you can't find it, you can't serve. Therefore, you become employed. Tonight is the beginning of change for you. I came from around the world to talk to you because the Creator is ready for you to manifest yourself. What a meeting we'll have these next 2 days. You're going to meet the most important person you've ever met in your life. You're going to meet you.